My name's Bethany Whitaker, and I'm a senior consultant with the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, also known as VEIC. For those of you who are not familiar with VEIC, we're a mission-driven nonprofit dedicated to reducing the economic and environmental cost of energy use, and we're best known for our work in the energy efficiency world. We operate energy efficiency utilities in Washington, D.C., parts of Ohio, and the state of Vermont, and we also work in transportation efficiency. Today, my presentation is going to focus on two things. I'm going to give you an overview of an electric school bus pilot project that VEIC managed for the state of Massachusetts, and then provide some lessons for getting started with a demonstration project. So VEIC manages an electric school bus pilot for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The project was funded through the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, also known as RGGI, and the money was available to purchase and deploy electric school buses. We started the project with three primary goals. The first was to deploy electric school buses and learn how they deployed in the field. We were particularly interested in fuel efficiency and energy costs, as well as vehicle performance and reliability. Our second goal was to test vehicle-to-grid and vehicle-to-building concepts and understand if this technology would be a viable way to help reduce the cost of electric school buses. Finally, we also wanted to increase awareness and understanding about electric school buses electric vehicles generally. So the project started in 2015 by inviting schools to apply to participate in the pilot. The Department of Energy Resources offered to pay the full cost of one bus and charging equipment. We asked the schools to pay the cost of installing the charging equipment and help collect data. We recruited 3 school districts and ordered buses in the summer of 2016. The buses arrived at the schools in late 2016, and all were licensed, plated, and ready for services by January 2017. So that means that all of the buses that have participated in the pilot have been on the road and operating for about 12 months. Just so you know, each school district purchased an Elion Type C school bus. Elion is a school bus manufacturer in Quebec province in Canada. The buses cost about $325,000 each. They had a 104 kilowatt hour battery on the buses, and they had an estimated range of about 75 miles. Yeah. And at the time we went to bid for the buses, Elion was the only vendor that offered fully manufactured vehicles operating in the Northeast. It means driving on salted roads, so we were not interested in refurbished vehicle models that at that time were available through some of the California vendors. Lion Bus was also attractive because they offered an option for auxiliary fuel-fired heaters. The auxiliary heaters helped us ensure that the buses could meet state standards for interior cabin temperatures. Schools also had options for how they could fuel the heaters. They could use diesel fuel, but they could also use propane or compressed natural gas. In our pilot, all of the schools did use diesel, and that's because they already had that fuel on site. And I actually advanced the slides too quickly, but it's okay. I did want to point out that one of our schools installed a wheelchair lift, and we did this because, as Dr. Wilson was saying, a lot of the kids are exposed to pollutants when they're on the school buses. It's particularly true for kids who sit on a wheelchair that's loaded slowly into a school bus right by the exhaust pipe. So some of the successes and challenges that we learned from the project, there were a lot of things that went really well. I would say the vehicles themselves were a big hit. Lion Bus did re-engineer several aspects of the school bus, including things that really made a difference to customers, like they made the bus a little bit wider, they added more windows, they improved the vehicle body, they used more carbon fiber, the roof was a single sheet of materials. These kind of improvements were noticed, and they made the vehicles easier and to maintain. They also are expected to increase the lifespan of the vehicle. The bus also proved to be fuel efficient, which meant that there were no problems with the travel range. In the beginning of the pilot, several of the schools plugged in during the middle of the day, but they quickly realized and learned that they didn't need to do that, so most only charged once a day at the end of the school day. And then I would say the community response to the pilot and to the vehicles was really great. Everybody, the parents, the students, the teachers, everyone liked the Lion Bus. They were excited about having an electric school bus in service at their schools. We did have a few things that didn't go very well. However, I just want to point those out. For starters, we had some problems with the software systems, like in particular data collection and the managed charging software. Many of these functions were in development when we started the pilot, and most are working now. We did spend a lot of time working with Lion Bus to figure out some of these problems and make sure that they could function smoothly. We also did have some issues with customer service and support. I think I mentioned that the Lion buses that were deployed in Massachusetts were the first Elion school buses that Lion sold in the United States. And so we had just a few minor problems associated with the border crossing. Some of them, like just for example, not all the schools were equipped to be able to call Canada when they need to. That was a problem that was easily solved. But just an example, some of the parts that were shipped across the border also tended to get to places a little bit slower. So there's a few problems with customer support and service. And finally, we did have some issues with vehicle reliability. There were a bunch of small issues when the buses first arrived. Most of these were relatively minor and involved things like the fuel gauge and error codes that the buses showed. In the late spring of 2017, we had one bus experience a battery cell failure. That kept the bus out of service for a couple of weeks. And then since that time, there's been one of the buses has had a handful of operational problems. They've all been minor, but that has meant that the bus has missed a few days of service. I'll also just want to point out that VEIC is conducting a evaluation of our experience in Massachusetts and really digging into the data so we can try to separate perception from what actually happened. I also said that the Massachusetts demonstration had a vehicle to grid and vehicle to building component. We have not yet deployed these systems. We think there's a lot of potential for the technology, and we've done a lot of analysis on each of the schools, but for a variety of reasons, including spending a lot of time getting the project up and started, we haven't got to this aspect of the project yet. It's still something that we hope to accomplish, and at least one of the schools is getting started on the project now. So I'm going to just spend a couple minutes telling you, like from our experience running a demonstration project over the last 18 months, if I were going to do it again, or if VEIC were going to do it again, some of the things that we would recommend. So first off, if I was going to sponsor a pilot project, I would deploy more vehicles at fewer sites. In Massachusetts, we gave each school one bus, and there was a lot of advantages for doing this, and it gave us a broader range of experience, but it also made it harder to separate sometimes the differences between the capacity at the site and the vehicles themselves. And I would also, if I was going to get started again, make sure that there was a lot of support for the project all the way down to the vehicle mechanics and technicians. It doesn't matter if the school, the school transportation service can be operated by the school itself, or it could be operated by a school bus, a private contractor. But the key thing is that they know about the project, they're interested in it, and they're committed to making it work. I would also suggest that you get in touch with some of your external stakeholders, like the Registry of Motor Vehicles, to make sure that these teams know about the project. For sure, you're going to need their help getting the bus licensed and plated, and then utility support is also really helpful. The charging equipment is pretty straightforward, especially if you're not trying to integrate the bus with the building or electrical grid. Electric school buses use somewhat standard vehicle charging systems, and so far none of the systems are proprietary. So you can use level 2 chargers with any school buses. They do require a higher amperage, so they're slightly more expensive and slightly different than the electric vehicle supply equipment that you would use for a regular car. We also suggest that you meter the charger so you can monitor electricity consumption. And in our experience, we bought the chargers after we bought the buses. I think that there's some merit to this approach. And in Massachusetts, we used, 2 schools used a Clipper Creek brand charger, and one used a Tesla charger. And in all cases, the systems cost less than $5,000 each. So training is super important, as is vehicle support. One of the things about electric vehicles in general, is that they're very different. And so we need to learn how to use them. We need to learn about systems that are they're just different from what we are used to. So make sure you have a good system to get the training and support you need. Having someone local that you can call on is a best practice. As mentioned in Massachusetts, all of us, Lion Bus, the schools, and VEIC underestimated the amount of support we needed. And this led to some frustration and challenges. I think a little more attention at the beginning for drivers, for training would have helped quite a bit. Monitoring and reporting is also important. Electric school bus is a new technology, and it can be hard to separate perception of what people think happened with what the data shows. So the more you measure and report, the better off you'll be. Plus, your stakeholders like to learn about what's going and track what's happening. Finally, I'm going to provide a couple of resources. VEIC has a website that provides information on electric school buses, and I'll give you that web link in a minute. But right now, I just want to let you know there's 3 electric school bus models that are available for purchase. Lion Bus is Type C, which is the one we used in Massachusetts. Plus, there's another manufacturer, Motive Power, that makes electric drivetrains and partners with manufacturers of school bus bodies, including TransTech to make a Type A and StarCraft for a Type C bus. These buses are on the road and operating in Long Island, New York, and in California. Finally, Bluebird has a model coming out this year, and Thomason International will have electric buses available in 2019. So that's also great news for the industry. And so I'm going to show you a link to our website. We have a lot of information on this website, including draft specs for if you want to purchase a vehicle. The specs are a little bit old. We did prepare them in 2015. So the industry has advanced and changed since that time, but there's something to get started with. There's also a comparison sheet that shows you the different vehicles available and some of the key attributes of that vehicle, of the vehicles. So feel free to go there, take a look, poke around. And if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or send me an email. Thanks, Molly.